Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program 2, where last episode we just put this thing into orbit and we need to take it out to Jool. So the first thing that we need to do is figure out which direction we want to burn this, and I think it's out over here. So if we were to burn it here, this would... I'm not going to bother with slingshots, I don't think. Hang on. That was an encounter, wasn't it? Yeah, there was an encounter here, but it's kind of a terrible encounter. I'm not going to bother with that for right now. This is a fair amount of DV, but I want to see about pushing this out here. Out past, like, the dress orbit. This would be... maybe it should be just beyond the dress orbit. Somewhere around here. So this is 1775 meters per second. That's a fair amount of burn. No doubt about that. But we've got a lot left in this thing. We have so much. Let's align for that burn. That's not very far away, which is really good because this thing really doesn't like to turn. Like, I mean, really doesn't like to turn. We don't have much for reaction wheel in here. This is not really intended to be flying with this much weight at this point. It is not ideal, shall we say. We are very slowly turning over here, but let's warp forward a little bit here. Maybe we'll be able to see something. Oh, yeah, that's much better. Now we can actually see things. Shocking. We're pretty close to the point as it is, and this'll do. We'll get there with our gimbaling for sure. So we're just going to bring this around. We're going back into the night side. Okay, that is, I guess, not surprising in the slightest, but slightly unfortunate. We've got about 45 seconds here. I am not going to warp any of this because I want to give it as much time as possible to align to the node. But it's not going to get there in the 40 seconds. But we're not going to warp forward just yet. It's very difficult to see again, but we'll be away from Kerbal quite soon, and that will make things a lot better. Also, I'm noting our electric charge is doing pretty well, all things considered. So that's not too bad. Of course, we have a very small amount of burn left in these side tanks, and those are going to burn out very, very quickly indeed. That's fine. We absolutely expect that. We've got about 22 seconds left on this burn. We are almost in position for the burn, believe it or not. Yes, this thing is actually turning. Just barely perceptibly. That's what we get for having just the one built-in reaction wheel with something this heavy. It'll be a lot better when we start dropping off some of these tanks. So that'll be okay. We've got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Let's get you some weight here. Okay. Side tanks are out of here. Nice clean detachment. I like it. So we can see just how much DV we have in this stage alone. It's more than enough to get through this burn, and probably our circularization out there as well. Maybe even our inclination change. So that's kind of huge. Our interplanetary transfer stage here is going to be doing some work, no doubt about it, but we're going to be ditching a whole lot of our mass here, and that's very, very good. We're very pleased about that. This is still going to be a pretty lengthy burn at over a 2-minute burn, but this is going to put our orbit out over dress, right? This is not bad thrust to weight. 2 minutes to get out over dress? That's really not bad. Pretty decent, all things considered. You can see just how much our thrust to weight is doing here. We are accelerating quite a lot. And that's phenomenal. Let's take a look at how this orbit is looking at this point. And yeah, it's not out tremendously far yet, but that's expected. It'll push out exponentially quickly as we get this orbital velocity up. So about 2 minutes, a little bit under on this burn. We can definitely warp through some of this burn. We can go at about 4x. I don't want to go too much higher than that. So at 4x speed here, we can see, yeah, this is definitely pushing out very nicely at this point. Beautiful. And we've got a fair amount of burn left here, because we want to push this orbit out very, very far. We're going out beyond dress to the Julian orbit, and note that Jool actually passes the Elu orbit, and at certain portions is actually further out than Elu. Now, its apoapsis is never higher than Elu's apoapsis, but here we go. We're almost done with this burn. Let's take it down to 1x warp, and Game thinks the burn is over, but it's not quite. Now we're good. Okay, we should have a much easier time turning now. And if we were to come out to this apoapsis, I would like to circularize this. How much DV is that going to take? It's a fair amount, for sure. But we do have enough in this first stage still to circularize our orbit around Kerbal. That's a little bit insane. I'm not going to lie. That is pretty insane. We're still going to have about 500 meters per second left. A little bit under 500 meters per second. Now we're going to need to align to this. Let's see how much quicker we turn now that we've burned like 2/3 of the fuel out of this stage and ditched the other stage. It's still pretty slow. But it is actually turning in a perceptible fashion. Okay, sounds good. We do need to get aligned before we warp here. Hello, Sunrise. Fantastic. I'm a little concerned, by the way, about how these solar panels are going to perform out at Joule. That's one of the reasons why I added a bunch of extra batteries. Not that that will solve the problem, but it would allow us to slowly charge over multiple passes. But by the way, we should probably remember to extend our antenna before we go out of antenna range. That would be mildly problematic if we didn't do that. So with that done, that is phenomenal. We're going to continue this turning operation for the moment. And it looks like we've got a fair amount of turning to do left. We have gotten rid of the vast majority of the weight that we were trying to turn previously, but this is still a little overweight for the tiny little reaction wheel that we've got. But I mean, we've got 8275 meters per second here, right? So that's not very surprising, all things considered. We can see here, that is the point that we're going to. It's actually basically retrograde, so we had to do a full 180-degree flip here. Yeah, okay. Well, we've got 249 days in which to do it, so this is not actually any sort of a problem. We are on our way right now to outside of the dress orbit, and we can just see Kerbal moving away from us here. I like it. It is very obviously moving away from us. We're traveling at like 3.5 kilometers per second right now. That's pretty speedy, no doubt about that. Not as speedy as it can be, but that is pretty speedy. If we were doing a return from like Elu to Kerbal, or like Elu to Moho, oh, that would be quite the braking burn. That would be insane. So we're very close right now to having this in position. We should probably start warping fairly soon, but I'm going to let it get a little bit closer here. Just a little bit closer. Slowly drifting into place. If only we could physics warp and turn in this game. Unfortunately, you can't do that, unlike in KSP1. Oh, Kerbal is suddenly gone. Okay, I clicked the button, and it was very speedy right off the bat. Excellent. So we're just heading around right now. This burn timing changed quite a lot there. That's interesting. But no, this is right. This is a correct burn timing. Lack of stellar exposure right now? I mean, that's probably... What is going on here? Where are we? Oh, we're inside of the craft. That's what that was. Okay, that makes more sense. We should have some amount of stellar exposure here, but the sun is getting further and further away, right? We are not very close to it, so these solar panels are not going to be maximally effective. They're at 94% right now. That's not bad. We're still about 4 hours away from this burn, though, so we definitely need to warp a little bit closer. Okay, now we're about 30 seconds away. 20, 10, and 3, 2, 1, mark. So circularization is engaged. Now, Joule is itself, I believe, in a little bit of an elliptical orbit, isn't it? Let's check here. No, that's pretty circular. It's Elu that's in an elliptical orbit. So that's okay. And also we can see that Dress is in a slightly elliptical orbit, but that's fine. We're not going to Dress for now. No one ever goes to Dress, I feel like, but we will eventually. We will eventually. But we just need to put this probe over Joule for right now. So we've got about a minute left in this burn, and that is, of course, going to be raising up this periapsis. I want to set Joule as our target. 1.3 degree inclination change. That's not so bad, but we probably should have done it before the circularization. In retrospect, we warped past it. I should have checked that. We'll have to warp around to the ascending node instead of doing it at the descending node. That's okay. It's not the end of the world. Let's warp through the rest of this burn here. We've got about 40 seconds left, and that seems absolutely fine. Things are getting a lot easier as we get out away from Kerbal here. So that is wonderful. The closer you get to Kerbal, the more DV a lot of this stuff takes. A little bit further than this. That'll do. Cool. So now we want to head around to this ascending node, and we are simply going to, well, this is already kind of naturally pinned open. We can just take this up here. Nope, other direction. Down here. Okay, somewhere around here or so. This'll do as far as the inclination change goes. Only 114 meters per second. That's not bad at all. We're going to have our inclination change done, and we're going to be doing part of our Hohmann transfer with our initial stage here. That's insane how much power we have in this first stage. Granted, this is a pretty light payload as far as this sort of payload goes. But even still, that's pretty insane. I wish we could physics warp this turn, but every burn is making us turn a little bit faster, and once we get rid of this first stage, that's going to be the majority of our mass. So we're going to be absolutely fine with turning once we're on our interplanetary transfer stage or our vehicle stage. Those will be much, much better in terms of turn rate. This is an incredibly powerful first stage, though. I didn't expect it to get quite this far. Not to be the Hohmann transfer to Joule. And we're not even taking that efficient of a path to Joule, either. This is kind of insane how far this is taking us. No doubt about that. How are we doing right now on our stellar exposure? 83 on this side, but it's not angled perfectly. So that's probably what's ending up going on there for now. We will have some stellar exposure out at Joule, but it won't be the best in the world. So we're getting aligned for this inclination change. We're almost there. Not the fastest turn rate ever, but it's fine. It is a very good long-distance rocket. This rocket will take us anywhere in the Kerbal system, for sure. 100% anywhere in the Kerbal system. So that's great. It's a little bit weak at sea level, but once we get into orbit, oh, it's so good. It has so much power. Let's warp forward here. We're going to need to warp forward a few months and get into position for this burn. Actually, this is over a year. It seems to not count years. Okay, yeah, it just went up to another year there. It doesn't count years. It just goes days and ignores years. So we don't actually know how far away things are. Fascinating. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think that's great. But I mean, years are going to get longer the further out we go, right? That is absolutely the way everything works. So we've got about 2 minutes until our burn here, and we're just going to warp forward a little bit further here. Okay, we've got about 20 seconds, 10 seconds, and 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. That should do the trick. Okay, let's get rid of that maneuver node. We should be at 0.0 or incredibly close to it. Yeah, we're at 0.0. So now let's see what an encounter with Joule might look like. So somewhere out here, yeah, we can see this is 21 days. But if we look at it here, well, actually, let's get rid of that. We go here, 1 year, 15 days. We create a maneuver plan, 15 days. So it just ignores the years in the maneuver readout. That's a little strange. No doubt about that. Let's move this on up and see what this looks like. That's actually not a terrible encounter time. I mean, it's not great, but it is not literally the worst thing I've ever seen. We would just change our burn time to be more like out here. A little bit more prograde. And that gets us an encounter. What is this periapsis here? I mean, this is a very wide periapsis right now. So that's 159,000 kilometers. So let's grab our node here. And I want to go prograde. That's retrograde. I guess retrograde would work. We just need to pull it inward instead of pulling it outward. Actually, we're losing some efficiency there. So maybe a little bit of radial or a little bit of normal. We can bring it in with normal. We're going to want a pretty low orbit here. Although I'm still not sure what the Julian... Okay, yeah, this is losing efficiency here. I'm still not sure what the Julian maximal is for its atmosphere. We should look into that for sure. So a little bit of radial out this way. Yeah, that popped away a couple times there. So that's 33 kilometers. Let's see here. Is there any sort of an indicator here? I think if we go back to the tracking station... Yeah, physical characteristics. Okay, so this is the sphere of influence, circumference, gravity, the atmospheric density, but this isn't saying what altitude the atmosphere starts at. Okay, that's what we need to know, is what altitude the atmosphere starts at, so that we can plot to be in the atmosphere for the amount of time that we need, while hopefully not succumbing to too much drag. That's going to be the interesting part here. We may fail that, but that's going to be very interesting indeed. So we're going to want to fly this guy, and I guess in the meantime, I'm going to have to look it up. So KSP2... Joule atmosphere height. Okay. Atmosphere pressure, atmospheric height is 200 kilometers. According to the KSP wiki. I believe that's KSP 1, but it might be the same in KSP 2. We'll go with that for now, and hopefully that's accurate. So let's zoom this on out here. We want to dial that encounter in a little bit. So that encounter was going to be out over here. So we want to grab Joule here. We want to grab the encounter. And the periapsis I want to pin open. So it's currently 33,000 kilometers. We want it to be at 200 kilometers. Well, not quite. We want it to be a little lower than that. Okay, what is this? 27,000 kilometers. Yeah, that definitely needs more work. We're losing some efficiency here, so let's bring this in a little bit this way. That's 21,000 kilometers. We keep having these encounters breaking it on us. Okay, let's try timing changes here. I think that snapped it around to the other side again. Yeah, it definitely did. Okay. What is this periapsis? 15,000? I don't really care about the inclination, to be clear. So let's just dial that in a bit. That is now 5,000 kilometers. Okay. That's 32 kilometers. That's a little too low. No doubt about it. That is too low. Let's bring this around the other way. I'd like to put it at, like, probably 300 or so. Okay, something like that. Assuming that the Julian atmosphere still begins at 200 kilometers. I don't know that that's a good assumption, but that's what we're going to go with. We're going to put our periapsis here at 300 kilometers. So we want to hit this pretty accurately, right? No doubt about that. Let's align to that burn, and we're going to get 344 meters per second of this, so roughly half of this Hohmann transfer is going to come from this first stage, which is insane, I might add. Absolutely insane. that our first stage is getting us half of our Hohmann transfer to Joule. That's crazy. But okay. We've got so much delta V left in this thing as well. So I love it. The real question is, how are we going to maintain in the atmosphere long enough for our sniffer to run its test? Its test is quite lengthy. Oh, hang on. I don't want to do that. Accidentally throttled us up there. That was a mildly awkward thing to do. I guess we're tumbling a little quicker. But we're not tumbling in necessarily the right direction. We want to go down here. We're working on it. Okay, let's freeze these physics. There we go. That'll do for now. And we're just going to start heading down this way. So I don't think I made a significant change there. What's our Joule periapsis at? Yeah, that's still at 300 kilometers. We are probably going to have to fine-tune that as we finish up this burn, though. Almost certainly. So we're slowly making our way over towards the maneuver node, which is somewhere. We're going this way. I thought that the maneuver node was down here, but no, that's actually target. We want to go over to the maneuver node, which is apparently down this direction, or maybe it's up over here? I'm not sure exactly where on the nav ball it is right now. I really wish that we could physics warp our turns in KSP2. That would be very convenient. Unfortunately for right now, that's not an option. Okay, there's the maneuver node. Nice. So we're pretty close here. We're going to be warping to this burn shortly. We know it's going to be a pretty lengthy warp. Absolutely. We're already 4 years into this flight, so it's fine. 334 meters per second still. So we did burn a little bit extra there. No doubt about it. But let's make our way over. We've got good momentum here on this turn right now. So that looks good. And our turns are going to get much faster once we finally ditch this stage. So we're going to warp here as soon as we are pretty close to being in position. This is reasonably close here, I feel like. Let's warp on forward. And this is going to be, I think, probably several years that we're going to be warping here before this next maneuver. Which is very normal when we're this far out. No doubt about it. We are very far out, and orbits take a very long time. It's going to get worse in terms of orbital durations. Not better. Well, I mean, it'll get better when we go to Moho. There's that. So we're about 3 hours away from this burn at this point, and let's just finish up our turn here. We've definitely got that turn undergoing. Actually, I'm going to warp us a little closer. 3 minutes. I'm going to warp us even closer. 30 seconds. Now we should be able to finish up this burn while we are working through this. So this is, of course, our Julian transfer here. It's going to be a slightly different burn. We'll have to make a correction once we get up here. That's fine. So our Joule periapsis is still showing us 300 kilometers, but we'll see what that ends up looking like. Our ascending-descending node is going to be slightly crazy. We know that. That is all very, very normal. So 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Engine is engaged. We're burning out this entire stage. And then we're going to burn some of our interplanetary transfer stage here. I'm curious to know how much delta V we actually have in that interplanetary transfer stage. 1600? That's not that much, actually. Okay, sure. That seems reasonably fine. I mean, we're going to have quite a lot of it for braking, and we're going to need it. But we are coming in on a pretty parabolic, or actually we're coming in on a hyperbolic trajectory, aren't we? I'm pretty sure we are coming in on a hyperbolic trajectory. So we're going to want to hop over to Joule at this point. Yeah, that's pretty hyperbolic indeed. So that looks good. We want to hit some trajectory like this. We don't care about necessarily this exact trajectory, but we do want this periapsis. So we're about 15 seconds away from the end of this burn. That's looking reasonable. And all we need to do for our first portion of this is merely enter the system. But I'm just going to finish up this burn here, and we are then probably going to put a cut in, and we'll do the actual flyby of Jool shortly. Okay. Noted. So this bar is not very accurate right now, I think. Let's just bring this guy right on in. Maybe it is accurate. Regardless, I think this is quasi-reasonable. I'm wondering, let's get rid of this, and let's make a quick maneuver up here to dial this in a little bit. This is only 12 days in the future. So let's dial that in, and this is going to be burning primarily probably this direction. Nope, it's the other way. No, actually, neither of those are useful. Okay, let's get rid of that, and that's in 34 days. I'd rather it be a little closer. So sometime around here, we can bring it in maybe a bit radially, but actually it's going to need to be mostly a retrograde burn here. It's a pretty complex burn. Okay, that's definitely dialing in. Nice. That's an impact trajectory. Okay, we don't want to impact. There's not really anything to impact, but we don't want to do that. We want to bring this up to that 300-kilometer marker. A little faster than this. Okay. 303, that's good enough. So let's align for that burn. That should be a fairly close burn, and we should turn reasonably quickly at this point. That's a 75 meter per second adjustment, and that looks good. Yeah, we're turning so much faster now. So much faster. That looks very good. So yeah, a small adjustment of 75 meters per second here will be far more efficient than doing it once we get into the Julian system. No doubt about that. So let's align for this burn. We're basically aligned now. Let's warp forward the 4 days and then do this corrective burn. About 40 seconds. Sounds good. We're going to want to hop over to Jool, of course. This is going to be a pretty minute burn here. And we're going to want to keep an eye on our periapsis here. Let's warp forward a little bit further. 20 seconds, 10 seconds, and there we go. I feel like I was slightly late on that, but it doesn't really matter all that much. Okay, this periapsis is what we care about. If I can get it to pin open. Okay, it keeps resetting itself, but that's reasonably fine. Just dialing that ever so slightly in. 400 kilometers and 286 should theoretically be fine. Okay. It is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode, we're going to bring ourselves into, hopefully, a circularized orbit around Jool. I wonder how much DV that would be. We can't find out for now because this is really weird, but we're in a pretty hyperbolic orbit here. It's going to be a lot. We're going to have to slow down quite a lot once we get there, and we might have to do a radial retrograde burn sometime around here, probably, actually. Or maybe around here-ish. But it'll be interesting. We'll experiment with that next episode. But this is a very hyperbolic orbit, so we're going to be cruising. We're absolutely going to be cruising here. You can see how far this is shooting us out in the future. So, yeah, it's rather a lot. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Atala, Ali Lee, Dark Horse, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.